Just in terms of where we stand, Qaanitah, it's a meeting that started in earnest yesterday and is set to continue until tomorrow. How decisive a moment is this for the ANC, given what's coming out through the various leaks, but also through the work of journalists such as yourself, working your sources?
I think it's a sort of, a moment for the ANC to actually face itself and to face the reality of the crisis at hand. The question really is the ANC going to be divided because because there are people who are charged with corruption and other criminal actions want to remain in their helm, and I think this is really a moment of reckoning for the party. There was one party leader who had said that is the ANC going to die because of an Ace Magashule? And that's the question, and that's the crisis the party is in at the moment, to say that it really is fighting about an effort to clean its public perception of itself. And it's bizarre when you think about it, when you take a step back and realize that what really is breaking the party at the moment is that should we be led by people who are charged of corruption? And there are people in that NEC that believe it's okay.
Sure. And so, Qaanitah, in terms of the conversations that you're picking up that are coming from there were indications that the ANC president, Cyril Ramaphosa, faced some tough questions, right? And faced some serious criticisms about whether or not, there have been concerted efforts to implement the mandate of uniting the ANC, or has he in a way become the president of a faction? Has that tone continued on day two?
Absolutely, and I think that it's different manifestations of the same argument. With one side saying that what Ramaphosa is that he's just the face of his faction at the Nasrec conference, and then on the other side you hear some of his supporters like Stanley Mashabat, etc. Or other leaders of the ANC NEC saying that the president is the best president the ANC has ever had. So you see this juxtaposition between the two. But there's also things that are coming out that I think would be very interesting. The first of which is what happens to the appeals process in terms of the step aside. And I think that that's going to be an important question. We understand that the NEC is not dealing with names as to who will populate that panel. It's said to be veterans of the ANC, but essentially those are going to be the people that decide the fate of the likes of Ace Magashule and Bongani Bongo. Then the other thing is the state of the party in relation to its finances, with local government elections coming up. The ANC has to admit that it doesn't have money, but worse still, part of the leaked recordings that have come out, it has blown the lid on how bad the party's finances are, to the point that there are talk of retrenchment of about 50% of staff at Tuli House. And that is quite serious, because that's where, the party had, or the ruling faction at Tuli House got its gravitas from the, and the ANC's might, so to say, always comes out in an election year. Chulasis, where you and I have been covering ANC factional battles for years and years and years, and you know that when it comes to an election campaign, for example, the party just somehow is able to, come together and show strength and try to convince voters. But it seems like it may not be the case this time, and I think that's probably worrying for the party, that they're fighting with each other about whether people who are criminally charged should be in their ranks or not, or should lead the party. And then the second thing is that the party itself just does not have the strength or the backbone that it used to have, whether it's financially, whether it's unity of purpose, whether it's just trying to win an election. And so as a result, you see this push and pull. You see what you aptly described as united in disunity. And this is where conversations around, is this the beginning of the end, start to play.
And now, add to that, as if to fuel the fire, there's calls that are coming through from some branches in the eThekwini region, for the entire NEC to actually resign or be dissolved. This, they say, to save the ANC.
This was always the nuclear option by supporters of Ace Magashule in the ANC, in that every time there was questions about, the actions of certain leaders, loyal to, one may argue, former President Jacob Zuma, there was always this threat of, let's go to a conference and resolve this by numbers. And so for me, without trying to get too deep into it, but it shows how popularity contests really is at the core of what is wrong with the ANC, and that people sort of, it's really who is popular at the moment, and not really anything deeper on an ideological level. And that's why you have the crisis that you have today. And you see it happen steadily since the Nasrec conference, that people came together not because they believed in a renewal for the party, at least, or a vision for the country. They came together as a result of a popularity contest, and that's what you see happen. And so when you see what's happening in eThekwini, you see I sort of like to predict it to be the nuclear card, the suicide mission, to say, okay, if I'm going down, we're all going to go down. And I think that if I was President Cyril Ramaphosa, I would sort of pay a little bit of attention to that, to say, how far are these quote unquote suicide bombers, for the lack of a better word, willing to go in terms of bringing the party down. ANC chairperson Gwede Matashe referred to it as the Samson approach, where they want to go down and take the party with them, and you see the different manifestations of it every day.
And how dramatic are the words of Thabo Mbeki, Qaanitah? For starters, I mean, this is a former president of the ANC who, like other former presidents of the ANC, is entitled to attend and participate at ANC National Executive Committee meetings, but for a long period of time he wasn't doing that. But now he's exercising that option, and quite actively so, and in this particular instance choosing to sort of emphasize a suggestion that came from one other NEC member for them to go on a boss parade to, let's go for a retreat, a 2 or 3 day retreat, and try and resolve these matters. And him repeating over and over again in that leaked recording the words about the question, do we still have an organization called the ANC? I thought that was pretty dramatic. Thabo Mbeki is not known for dramatics.
Absolutely. I mean, this has long been a call by the party veterans to have some sort of consultation of sort. And I think that, with former President Thabo Mbeki adding his voice to this, it really gives it some gravitas. The reality of it, Thulasizwe, is that the state, when you talk about the ANC, one party leader, I think it was in a meeting on Friday of the Women's League, had asked the question, insiders had said that when you talk about the ANC, are there really branches of the ANC? And that's a very valid question, because if you look at the Youth League is in crisis. If you look at provinces, provinces have not gone to conferences. Mpumalanga, for example, has not been able to successfully elect leadership. Northwest, Free State is currently disbanded. So the question of is there any party left? And I think it's, first of all, a very critical question, but I think that many leaders sitting in that meeting today may not have the answer to that.
So lastly then, Qaanitah, and I'd like to make this a feature of our coverage of this particular story. It's intriguing, it's fascinating if you follow politics, but at the end of the day we must always come back to the so what of it all. I mean, in the media alert about this week's NEC meeting, Qaanitah, the issue of local government elections is number 3 in terms of ranking. I don't suppose that they were ranking them in order of priority, but the fact that the first thing they thought of writing when they were writing this, they thought it's Integrity Commission reports, implementation of resolutions. The last bullet point you see there says, update on the COVID-19 pandemic and vaccine rollout. Why does this story continue to matter, Qaanitah Hunter, from your perspective as political editor at News 24?
It absolutely matters because the governing party is in turmoil and as a result is hamstrung to be able to make decisions effectively. We've seen through the Zondo Commission of Inquiry that corruption has plagued every sphere of our state. There is no government entity that is not buckled as a result of corruption and malfeasance. This is not just one or two people stealing a few quickies. This is an entire government collapsed on its knees because of rampant looting that is, one may argue, systemic and emboldened by the governing party, the ANC. This story is absolutely important because this is not about Ace Magashule and his criminal touch. This is the people who enabled, who gave the keys to our state or helped themselves to public resources. And if there is no precedent set, you would, I like to always refer to President Cyril Ramaphosa's testimony to the Zondo Commission because it gave us some sort of understanding of where his mind is at. And for him, he believes that the reformation or the renewal of the ANC is what's going to save South Africa. And he pointed to this process of step aside, this process of party leaders being held accountable or suspended if they don't voluntarily step aside. And the reality of it is that this entire fracas and debacle that's happening in the ANC this weekend and has happened in months preceding it will show us and will prove whether the party is able to reform and renew itself for the sake of the country. And it will prove whether it's putting South Africa first or it's putting itself first. And I think that is what's most important.